Welcome to the Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show we have something we're going to talk about, like a Linux project, maybe news, like today. Generally, we'll talk about a distribution or a piece of software. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. So today I have Eris helping me to kind of keep things straight. Jinda kind of keeps the chat straight, and Colin, he provides the content. So welcome, everybody.
Hey.
How is everyone? Good?
Good.
Nice to have Tyler back here. I haven't seen him in a dog's age. Can we say that? That's Linux Saloon appropriate, right? Dog's age?
It's been a while.
Yeah. Okay. And so on the docket for today, we got our news flight. Thanks to Michael Tennell from This Week in Linux. We're going to check the menu for next week, doing the a distro exploration. But I'll tell you what that is later, but you probably already know. Community free pour, last call. But first, Colin, what have you been doing this past week you said something about Nix OS.
I was messing with I've been on a quest for a while to have like a stable distro with updated packages, and I'm always just messing around to see what I can play with. I'm sort of interested in Nix packages because you can install that on any distro and install Nix packages. I was having a hard time just trying to install stuff. Different distros seem to react differently to the way it installs. Eventually, I got it working. Although it's on VirtualBox and I'm connected via an external hard drive with a USB 3, so it's not ideal. But KDE Live is one that's just doesn't launch at all. So I think there must be an issue with that. So I thought it might have been a bit better experience than what it was. So I'm trying to run outside of the Nix OS, and I'm using Debian. So I installed with the mini ISO with advanced installer and stuff. So that was so I just thought but I'm running stable Debian. I just wanted to see how it reacted with that. So that was an interesting thing to do. And the other thing that I came across also was, I don't know if anyone's seen Derek's from DistroTube, his frustrations with Linux. KDE Live had an issue during the week, had an update. I did have mine masked on Flatpak, but I took the mask off, and I actually rendered a video, didn't look at it. I was watching his video the next day, and he said, oh, his video turned out absolute rubbish. So I thought, curiosity got the better of me. I checked my video. It was absolutely terrible. So something's gone wrong with the KDE Live update. So what I did was actually in Flatpak downgraded my KDE Live to the last point that it was at, not too far back, and it's working sweet. So messing with Nix packages and then having that issue, and then the Flatpak I can downgrade, I can upgrade, it just seems Flatpak to me at the moment seems to be becoming the most universal and flexible package system within Linux. Seems to offer, although snaps do have in the software store, a simple channel you can adjust to stable and unstable and all that. So they seem to have a bit more flexibility as far as visuals concerned. But if you know how to look for what you want to downgrade to in Flatpak, it's achievable. So I was pretty impressed that I could go back at least one commit is what they call it, and my KDE Live's up and running. So I'm happy with that. So yeah,
regarding that video by DistroTube, I think I also saw it as like such an experienced Linux user. He didn't know how to downgrade a package in Arch. I'm like why has he been using Arch for so long when he doesn't know how to downgrade a package? I was like surprised. Like me, even right. Arch know how to downgrade a package. Like just go to your cache and install it. It's very easy.
Well, I don't even know how to do that. I've never learned in Arch on the repos actually how to downgrade. But I find things like Flatpak a bit easier. But yeah, I'm sure it's not that hard if I looked it up.
Like,
But mine's a flat.
He has been using Arch for several years. For me, it has not even been a year. I've been using Arch since December. That's it. Like even I know how to do that.
Yeah.
I found it really surprised. Like he wasted so much time when I don't know if he knew the solution or not. It's easy, just downgrade a package.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard. Many people do that. I know it's not supposed to be that way, but it's a bleeding edge distro. So issues come up all the time. But if you don't know how to fix it, why are you using it?
Yeah. That's why I use Flatpaks, because it's got a bit of flexibility. But now that you've brought that up, I might check that out, how to downgrade a package in Arch.
So in AndoverOS, you have a package called downgrade. So you just do sudo downgrade that package and you go to the previous one.
Is that right? Oh,
it works even if you have it in the cache. It downloads from
nice to know.
Archive. So but it doesn't work on ARM. I checked it. It doesn't work on ARM because ARM doesn't archives, but it works on x64.
Nice. I'll have to check that out. I didn't know that.
That's cool. I was going to say, I too have kind of been falling into the Flatpak camp. Have you noticed any like with Flatpak? I know there's been like with the flat seal and whatnot. Do you have a good time adjusting the security bit of it to make it work for your particular cases rather?
I've never really had to do anything with that at the moment. So I've got flat seal there in case I need it, but I haven't really needed it.
I was just going to say, I use flat seal pretty often. And I think it's really handy that it exists there to sort of toggle access that apps have to and from things. But it does sort of raise some concerns for me that you can make an app that just controls the access other apps have to things. I feel like this is something that down the road we need to be, that needs to be controlled by a specific official tool and isn't like open to other applications flipping these switches, because that does sort of in a way make it more vulnerable. But it's really handy to have, like if you need to give something access to a removable drive, or if you need to take away microphone access from something because it's hijacking your mic or whatever, just could use a little bit of work in terms of not relying on a third-party tool to control your security settings for all of your applications.
Maybe it's something that should be built in when the developer makes the Flatpak. There's some sort of system that Flatpak already has by default that you can have those things available.
Maybe they need to make it so you need sudo privileges to change any permissions from the Flatpaks to other parts of the system.
Now,
So
I was looking at GNOME settings, and GNOME settings does have an application setting. It would be cool if they could integrate like some Flatpak permissions into that itself.
Exactly, that's where it should be. That's what Elementary OS does, actually.
So those settings
Isn't it
are
open source? Like, isn't the tool open source? You can verify for malicious content if you want to.
It's not necessarily that the tool is malicious. It's the fact that a third-party app has the ability to control all of your permission settings for all your other apps. That shouldn't even be possible.
I see what you're saying, and I don't disagree. But I think that it's not. It's part of the baked into Flatpak is just a graphical interface that manages it. But you're right though, because there is some concern that an application could potentially just start flipping security switches. But I don't think it can. That is actually a really good. That is a really good thing to talk about. Like what Linux Ninja might know about. I know there's been security concerns about Flatpak, but I've never heard it brought up about that. Like what can actually have permission to start flipping switches, and how do you prevent malicious switchy flips, if you know what I mean?
Because there's not really any
have pseudo privileges to actually flip any switches.
I don't think that's necessarily the case, because you can have Flatpaks installed as a user. So otherwise, like you wouldn't be able to install like an app even on your own profile if you didn't have sudo, and you wouldn't be able to like use the microphone. I think one of the issues is that there's not really any sort of barrier between what handles the Flatpak override system and enforcing that it's the user making those decisions and not anything else. There's not really any sort of way of verifying that. But it's hard to implement because Flatpaks are cross distribution and cross desktop. So you would have to have every desktop environment implement an official, like, this is the only thing that can communicate with that sort of thing, which is difficult.
Do you think the solution is like just for the flat up organization who runs it, like they adopt flat seal into their own project code? Like it's like they just adopt the project and say we will like co-maintain it or whatever, because that will give it credibility.
If they were able to enforce that flat seal, or like a manually handled terminal command were the only things communicating with it, it would be an option. But I feel like, I don't know if that's something they'd be willing to do.
No, what I'm saying is
different.
I'm saying is that they adopt the project, giving it like, this is officially, you can do this.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know if that'll help at all, because even if they adopted it, it wouldn't address the concern that Flatpak itself allows applications to do that. So like anybody could still build another tool, even if that one's official, but they could build something that just flips the switches for all the other apps. And now the Flatpaks wouldn't be able to access anything from the other apps, but it could control what those apps can access. It's very weird. It's kind of like you could build a separate app that then changes what the other apps can do to allow those apps to do things they shouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah, that is concerning. And I suppose that could happen in Android too, with how they handle permissions as well. I suppose. I don't know that that's necessarily true, because it always makes you go back to something to change your permissions.
Yeah. No, I think it has you directly. So that's like the system settings for like app access control is part of the OS itself. So when it has you switch over to like the settings for that, that's like a system prompt, and then it switches you back over to the app rather than a third-party app. It's very weird though, still. I don't know, but it's really handy. It really is.
To me, it sounds like that there needs to be work to get the Flatpak permission system integrated into desktop environments. But then that runs into the issue where you're saying there should be a way to set the only authority for that. What's the best way to do that when we have a plethora of desktop environments?
Yeah.
Between GNOME, Plasma, Budgie, soon to be System 76's own Cosmic, just got a whole wide array of different desktop environments. So how would that be handled?
Complicates things.
Well, suppose they baked it into the Flatpak driver that you have to install first.
What I'm thinking is, before you are allowed to make a change, just like in Android, how a lot of times to make a security change, you have to punch in whatever security permissions are. Something like a sudo, like a user has to input their password basically to change the permissions of something like that. It requires that authentication to just be able to do it. Something along those lines. But I'm not a security expert. I don't pretend to be.
Yeah,
but that's interesting though. I'm sure it's being looked at. Whatever the problem is, if I'm thinking of it, I'm sure there are some non-smooth brains out there that have already thought about this.
It's incredibly difficult to design a system for deploying apps that like has to do everything like the same way on all of those systems, but then also try and be secure across them, or like secure enough across them, because controlling that security becomes almost impossible.
Right.
It's variables, right? Like you don't know, because everything is so different. Like every distro is different, every desktop environment is different. Like there's so many variables. Like how do you account for those things? And then when Linux has the flexibility, like the users can change whatever they want.
Yeah.
It wouldn't Dan be right though if you open the flat seal and you ask for, say, a password for the system?
The biggest issue is that Flatpaks are not specifically like system deployed. So like in elementary OS, for example, when you go to
Oh, right,
install
yeah.
something, it's
Right.
installed like as a user. So if you have like other users on the system that aren't administrators, they'd be screwed.
Okay, yeah, I
It's-
see.
Well, now that Flatpak installs a bunch of other junk you don't ask it to, like GNOME applications, platforms of many versions,
Yeah,
desktop, SDK, Mesa.
those are
um,
just underlying libraries that applications need to run.
Yeah. It's an awful lot of extra garbage that gets pulled into a Flatpak. And if one of these breaks, it's really hard to uninstall it and reinstall it again. It kind of gets stuck in the middle ground of limbo.
Flatpak?
Yes, I've actually
Really?
had to go sifting in Flatpak folders where the stuff is actually stored and delete it to get it to reinstall a fresh situation.
I can't say I've experienced that, but that's interesting that you
No,
have.
me either.
Like if you're installing a Flatpak and you shut it down in the middle of installing something, you got a limbo situation that's created sometimes that it
Okay.
won't break out of.
Well, Dan, that is a situation where you're holding your computer wrong if that happens.
Well, yeah, you got to tip it sideways and drain the water out of it, but
That was actually a dig at Apple.
I had
From
that
Steve
happen to me
Jobs.
twice.
Huh. I've never had that. That's
That
very
happened to me in the past. I don't know if it's happened recently to anybody, but that when I was updating and I stopped it, it did sort of messed up the system. And that never happened to me with Snap. Maybe Snap is more resilient. I'm not sure.
Well, everything's kind of a moving target, really. Everything from security to the quality of Flatpaks to the quality of snaps or app images, since that was actually asked about in the chat as well. It's all, yeah. You find a way to make a better defense. Someone finds a way to make a better way to defeat that defense. And the cycle continues. So
or you can just sit on defense.
you can sit on defense, but hopefully it's not a concertina wire top fence, because that's going to be very painful if you sit on that fence.
Ouch.
Did anybody else have anything they want to share with the class? Well, if not, I do want to share something with the class. I'm very excited. This week, I finally got, after 11 months, my Steam Deck. So
Wow.
I got the 512. I went for broke on it because I figure if you're gonna go in, go all in. And I have to say, now it has Arch on it, or a Steam modified Arch essentially runs on it. So this is the only thing I own that runs Arch, and it will be the only thing I run Arch on, at least for the foreseeable time. So I have to say, I'm really impressed with it. I was actually playing Fortnite with my kids. Apparently, that's the new hotness right now again. I don't know, but what a terrible game, by the way. It's really boring for me. I don't know what my problem is. Anyway, not to poke at Epic Games. They're still a terrible company, but I do appreciate the fact they have this thing called Xbox Play that I can run. So I got it to work on the Steam Deck in a hacky way. So I took the Edge browser, made some modifications to how it presents itself in Steam, added as a Steam, like a external application, because you can actually add applications to Steam that are not Steam, whatever. You'll just launch them. And then I have it automatically launch Xbox Play. So then I can like Stadia, or what's the one that NVIDIA has that's kind of cool? Anybody remember what that is? Adam Grums.
Yeah, that's
he talks about that one. And then I think there's another one being in the works too. I think Steam has got actually one, I think, in the works as well. So, well, they have their remote play. Anyway, so I'm able to play quite comfortably, even on my less than stellar internet connection.
So Nate, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So did you own a Switch?
Yes.
How
have-
does the Switch compare to the Steam Deck? Because in my opinion, that's the closest one. Like you can't compare like PS or Xbox with Steam Deck, but the only thing you can compare is a Switch. So like
Okay.
I really wanted your opinion. Like no one,
All right,
like,
so-
online, everyone says Steam Deck this, Steam Deck right, but no one actually compares that to the Switch.
Okay. So the Switch, I will say, okay, Adam Grubb said GeForce Now is the NVIDIA remote play system. So now we know. Yes, Anna, I could. So the Switch, I think, is, for my fingers, is not very good. My hands are too big for the Switch. So actually it causes cramping for me to use it for an extended period of time. The Switch Lite, I'd like to say, is better, but it's actually worse for my hands. But for my kids, it's perfect, the Switch Lite, because actually a couple of kids have a Switch Lite, and we have a Switch. I didn't pay for them. You know, that's what grandparents are for, I guess. So I would say the Steam Deck actually fits in my hand very nice. It could be a little bit bigger. Like the best handheld thing I've ever used was the Wii U gamepad. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But the Wii U gamepad and the Steam Deck are about the same size. The Steam Deck feels a little more quality built than the Wii U gamepad, but the Wii U gamepad's got a little bit better grips for my hands. The Steam Deck is very good, but I would just find that better. The little touch pads on it are great. You have to, a little bit. They operate differently than a laptop touchpad, and so you have Plasma. KDE Plasma is is basically the operating system, the desktop underneath the Steam Deck, and it's just a very stripped down vanilla setup. And so you can install Flatpak there. So if there are any Flatpak games, so you can install the Xenotic and all the Tux games. Do you know there's a Tux Party? I think for the next application review, I wanna do Tux Party because I haven't played it yet. I imagine it's like Mario Party. Anyway, that's just, I'm gonna throw it out there, see if I can get any buy-in on that one. But as far as like how the thing responds, so now I don't play like a lot of the first-person shooters. I'm just not; those just don't do a lot for me. But like I installed, which took forever, the new Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga, which took like a day to install on my internet speeds, and that runs great. Everything is like they have controller profiles already built into it, and so everything just kind of runs really well. So that said, I really like it. And then I realized as great as the Steam Deck is, the reality is I don't have time to actually play games. So was it a good purchase? Probably not. But I'm happy. I still am happy I have it. It's my game system. It's gonna end up actually as a living room. I'm gonna hook it up to the living room TV, and that'll be like our PC we have in there basically. So probably what it'll end up doing for the most part for family game nights whenever I do actually have those again. Do you have any other questions on the Steam Deck?
Also, I think there was a lukewarm response to you getting a Steam Deck. We want a more strong response. Yay!
Yay! Yeah. I don't care. You don't have to cheer. Like, yay, you got a toy. Whoopity doo. You waited 11 months for some
Like,
plastic and metal.
I'm so far behind in the list. I'm like, I paid $5. I'm like, I won't even buy it now because now I'm into single board computers, so I'm spending money there. I don't think I'll spend money on the Steam Deck anymore.
Well, it's kind of a single board
I wanted it
computer.
for retro gaming anywhere. Like what I wanted to do on Steam Deck was retro gaming, but now I can accomplish that on a single board computer. So
It is well built, I will say, the fit and finish of it. So I'm a WASD for doing like first person shooters, and so I have a hard time using like analog joysticks for it. I feel like I don't have the fine motor movement skills for that. I think that's probably for the next generation. It's not for the old timers to get used to that, I don't think.
I usually like first person shooter games if they have a really good story behind them. If they just got a garbage, like you're in the army, kill everybody type theme to them I don't like.
That's understandable. Is there anybody here that has like a specific genre that may be less common that they really enjoy game-wise? Like anybody here into like the Japanese RPGs? Like Pokemon? No? Okay. No. Gotta catch them all. Pokemon. I call them Pokemon just to... Oh, there we go. So Tyler, obviously...
But I try to build the best team. Like the most balanced and the best team. I don't try to catch them all.
I gotcha. So I do have the Vice emulator running on the Steam Deck, so I can play my Commodore 64 games if I feel so inclined. And it actually works quite well. Except for the on-screen keyboard part. That's not so great for the Commodore 64. But all right. So let's go ahead and move on to the news. So it's time to muddle our way through the Linux news. As always, a big thanks to Michael of This Week in Linux for mixing us up a great flight of topics. And the first thing that I want to pull off the list, I'm very excited about this. I might be the cheese that stands alone, but that's all right. KDE Plasma 5.25. Did everyone know that it was released? Did anybody care? So I'm excited about, yes, I see a little party symbol there you have in the corner, Servan. So it's you and me, buddy.
Yeah,
so I can...
In the Plasma way.
So they've done a great job of improving on their continued efforts for reliable Wayland support. They've also had improvements around gesture handling. So like you can do like three finger swipes to go to different... they basically copied GNOME, a lot of the GNOME interface for gestures, which I'm all about that. I like that cross-pollination. That's something that GNOME actually does quite nicely. There's continued enhancements for better customization and so much more. So they've improved the look and flow of the overview in Plasma 5.25. For those who aren't familiar with the overview, it's essentially a way to interact with all of your open windows and virtual desktops in one interface. You can search for apps, documents, and browser tabs with KRunner and the application launcher. Plus, you can add, remove, and rename virtual desktops, which is cool. Well, you could do that before, but they made it a little bit more slick now. I think something that GNOME was able to do for quite some time now is like dynamically add. Is it GNOME can dynamically add virtual desktops? Is that something they can do?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes, it does.
That is a neat feature. I don't know if I can. Yeah. So you can now do that in Plasma, which is good. So the lot of laptop navigation enhancements using gestures with touchpads and touchscreens that puts Plasma at your fingertips. So you can switch desktops with your 3-finger swipe. You can easily activate the overview. They also made it possible to activate the present windows and desktop grid effects. So speaking of touch, you can now activate touch mode. The task manager and the system tray become bigger when the touch mode is and making it easier to on your fingers. So you can customize the size of the icons when touch mode is disabled too. Title bars of the KDE apps become taller when in touch mode, making it easier to press, drag, and close windows with a touch. Context menu items become taller when in touch mode, giving you more space to tap the correct one. So there's a really cool change to the global theme setting page. It now lets you pick and choose specific parts to apply, so you can apply only specific pieces of a global theme that you like best. And there's a lot more to talk about. There's just really too much to cover. But also very cool is the colors and accents, which I think it was Elementary that really kicked that off. Wasn't it the first desktop that had a Pantheon that had the color accent? We can very easily choose that. Well, now you can tint colors and the color scheme using the accent color and choose how much tint you'd like to see mixed in with your normal color scheme. You can also now make the header area of the title bar use the accent color, but the coolest change to the colors for me is the ability to sync the accent color with your wallpaper. I don't know if anyone else is doing that. Is that
Android is doing that. Android 12.
Oh, that's right. Android.
That's where it probably started. Like, I hate that feature because I can't change it anymore. But it's like it lost all the like in Android you can't change it. Like earlier you had accent colors, but now it's by default based on your wallpaper. For me, it's purple. It's good, but again, there's no option. I think that's where everyone is getting it from. Like, your wallpaper has to match your accent now.
Mac OS also does that.
Okay.
No,
So if
GNOME
you-
actually makes the wallpaper go dark and light depending whether you choose the dark theme or the light theme. The wallpaper will adjust accordingly.
I think Elementary does that as
Yeah.
well, don't they?
I'm not sure.
I thought Elementary did that. I could.
Yeah, they do. They have both dark and light wallpapers. I don't know if it
Right.
changes the theme, but for that
I could've
particular theme, they have both light and dark wallpapers.
I could have sworn that Elementary did that. I shouldn't swear. So also, if you're using the wallpaper slideshow feature in Plasma, colors will auto-update when the wallpaper changes. So I have a link that Jinda can share below, because that's kind of what Jinda does. So do you think a lot of these changes I see to Plasma are very user experience type changes, as far as like colors, themes, overviews, and things like that? Do you think things like this are actually productivity enhancers, or do you think they're just more distractions?
No, productivity enhancer for sure.
You think so?
Yeah. Without a doubt, the overview is probably a long time. It's actually way overdue for Plasma, I would have thought, considering the amount of things you can do with Plasma, and the amount of tweaks and stuff you can do with the what's that thing called that they have installed with the cubes and all that. I mean, you can do all this stuff, and yet they're only just implementing the overview now, which GNOME's had for quite a long time. It's nice to be able to get a view of what's open and where you want things and where you want to put them. You can easily change from, and not only that, KRunner. I don't use Plasma very often, but KRunner is a nice little tool. It finds a lot of stuff. So that being included with an activities overview is a productivity changer for sure, I would have thought. That's just my opinion anyway.
Sure.
But
No,
I
that's
would've
what
thought
I'm
it
hearing.
was.
Opinions. Shickle,
Yeah.
you think that's also a productivity enhancer? I mean, I can understand the gestures.
Definitely.
But like for accent colors, the overview, is that really something? What's that?
Definitely. And I think a good argument for things like even accent colors is that even though I generally, in terms of like theming, I generally am uninterested. But I think in terms of something where the system itself adapts to little things that you do, like the wallpaper and stuff like that, um, as a whole, I think an environment that works to make itself more comfortable with your style, little things like that matter. Because if you're going to be spending hours in front of your computer for whatever reason, it needs to be a comfortable environment. So things like that, like they do matter, and it may be small, but I think it definitely is even though it's aesthetic, it definitely does help productivity.
Also, like what I think is that for most people, for their jobs, it's like you have to spend time in front of a computer. Just spending hours in front of a computer, like Shikal says, you better like it, otherwise it's not going to be a nice experience. So quality of life improvements are always appreciated, however small they are.
Yeah, I'd agree to that. I don't know that I care about the accent colors. If it's anything other than green, I don't care. Maybe that's my
That's
problem.
because you're unit, you are open to say
Yeah.
fanboy. That's right. Not for
Green
others.
is-
We like different colors.
Green
But what
is,
if they offered a shades of green?
like 50 Shades of Green?
Yeah.
It's a good question. So, Mark, you slipped in here. You just pulled your stool up to the bar. What are your thoughts on some of these changes that Plasma has made? Do you think that they are like truly beneficial, or are they just kind of more bloat into the desktop environment?
From a non-technical standpoint, I would say anything that makes it look better, or backgrounds and themes, I think is good. From a technical perspective, I haven't really done any analysis to know if it reduces performance or that, but no, my opinion is I think it's good.
Okay. So Linux Ninja, is your mic working? He snuck in here. He's off in the corners, kind of watching us, making me uncomfortable. I'm kidding. Yeah, so I've been running 5.25 for a little bit now, and I have to say, the improvements are noticeable. The gestures don't work in X11, but they do work in Wayland. Is anybody here using Wayland now, full time on their desktops? Shickle, of course, Shickle is.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because I don't use Plasma, so.
But yeah, but nonetheless.
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think the biggest barrier I've had with Wayland at this point, and I think this is more on GNOME, because OBS fixed everything on their side, and it's up to GNOME to kind of finish their implementation. Is when I put in a window capture in OBS, I get these fat black borders on a window capture. I do a lot of window captures when I do streams, such as like I want to play GeoGuessr on streams. I'm going to do a window capture of the web browser. And each time I'm doing that, I'm having to crop those big black bars out. And that's a lot of extra effort during stream prep that I just don't want to do. And I would just much rather run Xorg and have everything the way I expect it to run under OBS and Xorg.
I've not been using OBS with Wayland. Like this machine I'm using here uses X. I don't have a touchpad here, so I don't care about gestures. My laptop, I have been running Wayland, but right now it's running X because I need to have Barrier working, or Synergy rather, and that does not work with Wayland yet. Supposedly there's a fix coming, like it's in the process, but it's not here yet. That's really my last hurdle, because the upgrade of 5.25.0 fixed the drag and drop. I can now drag files from the file manager into Firefox, and that actually works now if I want to upload stuff. So that works now, yeah. And I can't. So I think that there's just that one little showstopper for me, and then I can actually use Wayland full time.
I was gonna say, yeah, but besides that minor OBS thing, the other barrier to Wayland for me is barrier.
Right? Yeah, barrier. Yeah, that's exactly it.
If there is barrier for Wayland, I'll switch immediately. Everything.
Have they got
Yeah.
Wayland to work perfectly with an NVIDIA cards now?
We're very close. Very, very close.
That's the one thing that's stopping me with the Wayland is my last Wayland install and NVIDIA did not like each other.
I typically prefer Wayland because I mean I do use OBS, but I do full screen capture, and anytime I do like window capture, it's really just like I use like an app called Kuha, which uses like the native API for all of that stuff, and like is totally compatible with it. But if I was like streaming, it wouldn't work for me because I would have to like do all that OBS stuff. But performance in GNOME Wayland for me has been better, like input latency way down over X, and my battery life has been a little better. So that's what I primarily use laptops. So that's kind of important for me.
Oh, for sure. That actually is one thing I noticed very early on when I tried Wayland is my battery life was much better on my laptop. I mean, I think it was like maybe, you know, if we're talking like dirty numbers here, like playing fast and loose, probably a good 30 minutes of additional time. And the big thing is, you know, I noticed that with X, if you are very irresponsible like me and you just leave applications open and open and open and open and you don't shut them because you have the memory for it, the X does start to have like noticeable, like just not, I don't want to say like lags, but like it's not as responsive. It's not like it's not responsive, but like just there's noticeable performance degradation. It's very minute. It's probably like we're talking milliseconds here, but you don't see that with Wayland because I'm still just as irresponsible with Wayland.
I was running Wayland full time and then I had some issues and I switched back. And when you switch back, you quite often forget that you've actually switched over. So I'm just logging into X11, I believe. So, but there's nothing worse than when you're trying to do something and you come across an issue and you have to log out and log back in.
Something that I've noticed
So I'm probably just stuck with that.
Works a little better on Wayland is, so whenever you open a window, you resize it and you put it where you want it. If you close that window and reopen that window, it should go exactly to the place it once was.
Oh,
and I find that more applications follow that behavior properly on Wayland than they do on X.
Yeah, and X, they just kind of plunk them in the middle of the screen.
I think what I'm going to do, because I rarely stream from my laptop except when, you know, I do a collaboration with someone on location, I might start using Wayland on Pop! OS on my laptop and see how that goes long term, because I really do want those trackpad gestures that GNOME has under Wayland.
Yeah, they're pretty good. All these finger gestures they're coming up with now are really good for the laptops anyway, I must say, or tablet and all that. They work really well.
I do find the window positions are being saved, but they're not being adhered to close enough. Like I have Firefox that opens in a very specific position on my screen, but then when you reopen it, it's that position plus a few pixels. So
oh, that would be so annoying.
Every time you open it, it's almost where you wanted it, but you've got to go move it slightly to put it back where it belongs.
That's frustrating.
I think when you think about it, if you go back a couple of years, to think that we'd be using Wayland this much and having, you know, teething problems like we are now, a couple of years ago, it was probably unthinkable, wasn't it? You'd think?
But Colin, isn't Wayland like started in 2008 or something? It's been like 14 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. 2008 it might have been. I know I was told in 2012, next year, in 2012, I was told next year Wayland would be replacing X.
So when is the year of the Wayland desktop?
The year of the Wayland desktop.
We'll define Wayland desktop. That's a good question. Is it when NVIDIA fully supports it, or is it when all the desktop environments can support Wayland?
So
Wow,
as
that's
far
a
as
good
the
question.
window position thing, I just use PopShell on GNOME, so everything's always tiled anyway.
I test all the distros underneath KVM using Vert Manager, and I found that it doesn't matter if I'm on my NVIDIA system or if I'm on my AMD system. Any virtual machine that defaults to Wayland is completely unusable. I have to shut it down and then bring it back to the login screen and then switch it over to X. And if there is no X option, I just simply can't use it until I get it to run under X.
I
Is your
was
host
able to
system-
get a Fedora virtual machine running with Wayland. It was not that hard. I use Word Manager.
Perfect example of that was the last 2 Fedora releases.
So I
loaded
tried
them up.
this back in January. So I used Fedora. I forgot the version. I just downloaded the data. So I saw in January. I just put it on. It worked.
Yeah.
I think it had Wayland back in January.
If I try either of the last 2 Fedoras, what I get when I log in using Vert Manager is like a quarter of the screen will render, and you can't see the other 3/4 or some other odd problems like that. So I've
Oh yeah, I don't have any.
entirely abandoned
I
any
just
attempts
use-
to use Wayland on any system. If it's not running under X, I'm just not using it.
So is your
So I have
host
a
system
question.
running Wayland when you run Wayland in the virtual machine?
No,
Okay. I wonder if that's the problem. The Wayland into X doesn't work, but Wayland into
I don't
Wayland.
think so, Nate.
You think so?
I ran X. I ran X. Like I think I ran Word Manager in Plasma, running on X11, but Word Manager was booting up Fedora on Wayland. So that's again, it's not related. It doesn't matter whatever you're running because Word Manager is contained by itself.
I wonder if the because there are different display devices you can use in Vert Manager. See now Linux Ninja, now you got me wanting to experiment this week and see what I can figure out on my end. So thanks a lot. I have to write this down.
someone needs to wake the cat.
A new rabbit hole, Nate.
Yes.
Tyler, you can't be let that cat sleep like that. You gotta wake him up.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So how do you tell if your system is running Wayland? And just because I was trying to find out where I could see that.
If you
Now, I
open
see-
up a terminal and you type echo and then $ all caps XDG _ session type or session _ type, it'll tell you Wayland or X11
Ooh. Yeah, no. XDG.
_ session _ type. All of that's in caps.
Shikal, what is XDG_portal? Is that similar?
Sorry, XDG what?
Underscore portal? PORTL?
I have no idea.
I always get
If
confused.
if you're on GNOME, if you hit the Alt and F2 button and type, that gives you a run dialog. If you type R to restart X, it'll either restart or it'll tell you restart is not possible on Wayland. So that's
So-
another
That's
way you
true.
can do it on the GNOME desktop.
So if you're on GNOME, you can just go to the system settings and go to the about dialog.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
I forgot
yeah,
about
that's
that.
another way. Yeah.
And
In the
in
about
Plasma,
guide,
you can go to the info. In Plasma, there's the info, and it'll tell you Wayland or
Nice.
X11.
No, I was just I was wanting to know for the audience listening if they're able to tell, how to tell them to look if they don't know.
So I noticed that the Steam Deck, when it's in the desktop mode, it does use X11, not Wayland.
And also another thing for the audience, like if you're in your display manager, especially SGDM, when you're logging onto Plasma, you either can select Plasma X11 or Plasma Wayland at the login screen when logging onto SGDM.
Yep.
That's
This is
also
true.
another way of choosing. You can actually choose. You can switch all the way anytime you want.
Yeah, that's correct. The same with the GNOME desktop as well.
That's cool.
Now, I thought the Ubuntu 2204 that comes with the GNOME, was it GNOME? I forget which version.
What are you doing?
I
It comes
thought
with the latest.
Yeah, I thought it was going to come with Wayland on by default, but apparently
Not for NVIDIA.
Yeah, and I've got a Radeon, I got AMD video, but yeah, it was set up. It chose X11, so I'm not sure, or maybe it was something I did, but it's X11.
I've heard that it goes to Wayland as long as you don't have NVIDIA.
I've heard the same, Aris. I've heard the same.
I wonder if that factored into NVIDIA's decision to open source some of their software to make it easier
bet
to
it-
get integrated into Wayland because they felt like they were going to get left behind otherwise.
Here's another way you can do it too. INXI space dash capital G will give you all your graphics information.
It's not a program always installed by default.
Yeah, I think
Environment variable.
Manjaro's
The environment
big
variable
one
is
that
what that's
does that.
looking at. So echoing the environment variable is how it's getting it.
Mhm.
Well, cool. Let's hope that NVIDIA continues to make Wayland easier. Let's hope that whatever is causing Linux Ninja to be upset about Wayland also gets fixed, because I know he seems a little visceral about it in the chat. I'm happy with many aspects of Wayland. There's just one little thing, and I think Wayland will be tip-top perfect. I do appreciate the smoother effects on the desktop and the reduced power consumption on the laptop for sure. So
Also,
It's-
one more thing, like Wayland is good at, I don't know if it is true for all single board computers, but have you heard of Odroid? I think it's a South Korean company who makes like really good single board computers. For that, if I'm using X11 on Plasma, it's like I can't even use it when I'm using Firefox. There's so much screen tearing. But when I use it on Wayland, it's like magically nothing happens. Everything is good. I can turn on the, like, if I have to use X11 on Plasma, I have to turn off the compositor. Otherwise, I can't even use anything. But on Wayland, like, it's so good. Like, all the effects are good. I even watched a 4K video on a single board computer. Yeah, it's really good. That's why I've been using, only over the past 2 weeks, I've been using Wayland on Plasma, even though it doesn't integrate well with my Barrier. Like every time I launch Barrier, it's like, you're using Wayland, it doesn't work. Like it throws up an error message. So maybe that's another way to detect whether you're using X11 or Wayland. Barrier throws up an error message. But it's been really good. Like, this is a small single board computer. I'm able to play a 4K video on YouTube.
yeah, it's amazing. I should try it on my Raspberry Pi to see how that,
No, it doesn't work.
works. No,
I
not
have a
Raspberry Pi.
Raspberry Pi too. So Odroid is a 6-core, it has 6 cores, 4 big cores, which you can overclock at 2.4 gigahertz, and 2 small cores at 2 gigahertz. So it's way more powerful than a Raspberry Pi. The only defect is a 4 GB RAM. So that's why I use a ZRAM with 2 GB. So overall I get a 6 GB RAM. Otherwise, like, it's really powerful. Like, I use it to build Linux kernels too. It's like at least 80% faster than a Raspberry Pi at the minimum.
Wow. What does it run for the
So
CPU
for
then?
Raspberry Pi, I built a Linux kernel. It took 1 hour 45 minutes, but the same thing on the Odroid will take you 1 hour 15 minutes.
What does the Odroid have for a CPU then?
I forgot. I think it's AIM Logic. It has 4 Cortex A72, I think. You can
Okay.
look it up. I use Odroid N2 Plus. It's really powerful, but the only thing is like it's just a 4 GB RAM, but it has a much better heat sink. So even though it's more powerful, for Raspberry Pi, I need a fan. I have an external fan to cool it down, but for Odroid, even though it's much more powerful, I don't need a cooling fan. It has a
Really?
really good heat sink, like a very big heat sink.
That's very interesting.
So that's why, like, Raspberry Pi I use for my everyday stuff, like normal stuff, like browsing and other stuff. But if I'm actually building stuff or compiling packages and doing like I use Odroid. It's much
Okay.
more powerful.
How does power consumption compare to Raspberry Pi?
I haven't checked, but these are like very small. I think these consume below 5 watts. Like, I don't care. Like, you can go to Odroid's website. They have comparison, like benchmarking Raspberry Pi versus their models. I can find you a link and post it in the chat. It's like, it's really good. But the only issue is like, you need to find the correct kernel package build, like correct kernel configs to get stuff working. So there's a team of people, like one of them who works actually for Odroid. It's called Archdroid. They develop like some graphic drivers. They maintain their own package builds. So I take them and build them for the EndeavorOS repos for Odroid to enable like, otherwise, if you see their Odroid's actual like kernels, they use like kernel 4.9 or something, or 5. Like very old kernels to get everything working. But if you want the latest kernel, you need the package builds from Odroid people. They have very good support, so I use that. It's been really good. I even got Btrfs working on it, so now I have snapshots and other stuff too. And Odroid, like it's a really powerful machine. Like I've been thinking of like converting that as a full-time like desktop, like abandoning my laptop, because it's really good. Everything is very smooth. But again, I have to use Wayland. I really need Barrier to work. Other then I can ditch my laptop at home.
I'm gonna have to look into the Odroid thing. I don't I've never even considered it.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
have.
but you can actually like run like I think it runs Android. Probably some people have tried Linux on it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I forgot.
I think one of the
saw a couple of videos of it like a couple of months ago. Samsung.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. I was like really impressed by it. It's like you just dock your phone, and now you have a laptop, like a working computer. And
Yeah.
it's like so cool. But again, it's not very powerful. Like phone processors are not that powerful. But if like phone processors get more and more powerful, then you can just dock your phone. You don't even need to buy a laptop anymore. You just dock your phone. You have a computer for browsing a lot of stuff, and maybe
Yeah.
you just use a desktop for the higher power computing needs. But for your portable needs, you just need that lightweight, and it's lightweight, right? Because you probably just need a battery, you just need a keyboard, you don't need a processor inside, just need a screen.
That's the idea.
It's like
The
it's
next stop
really lightweight.
came out with a new device that had that where it's kind of like the Yoga 360. I bought the Next Dock 2, which is a
What
beautiful piece
company?
of hardware.
What company?
It's called Next Dock.
Xdock. Okay. I'll look it up.
Yeah, and beautiful piece of hardware. Unfortunately, the drivers they used for the mouse pad when you connected it made the trackpad think it was a mouse. And so when you did like certain gestures on the mouse pad, it equated to certain Android gestures and threw off the whole experience. It was horrible. So it was like, I always thought it was like my wrist just touching it too much and the wrist detection was bad, but it was they chose a really bad driver. But otherwise it would have been a great experience. So we're always flirting and we're getting close, but never really close enough. And the e-waste that it could save is incredible because you get a new phone, you don't have to upgrade your laptop because your phone's the guts of it. I mean, there's so many different benefits of it, but
I think the closest thing we have right now, and not to toot Apple's horn as I always do, but I've taken a pretty big bite. I think that honestly their
More puns?
ecosystem is the closest thing we have right now where like everything is connected and everything is like transferable between machines. Like it's still not quite there. It is still split, but it's just the closest thing that's succeeded in
and
any
they were
massive
so smart
capacity.
about it too. Like they slow played it with how
Mhm.
the MacBook user interface has slowly adopted a lot of iOS interfaces, and they're just slowly onboarding us. Google Chrome OS is doing this too.
Yep.
So it's so the big companies knew. So Canonical was ahead of the curve. There were two ahead of the curve. The big companies are slow playing it, and that's fine. That's how they grow. They got the time and money to do that. But yeah, I agree. I think Mac OS is like and Apple have done a great job with slowly getting us there, especially with the chips M1 chips now.
Yeah. It's just one of those things like I literally like I open up Safari right now and there's literally on my homepage there's a category where it's like from your phone, from your Mac, from this, all of like the links that I was on, all of them are there. I can resume wherever I was. If I'm like writing an email on my phone and I think I need a full keyboard for this, I'm going crazy. I literally just it shows up in my dock and I just pick it up where I left off. Like
I think Chrome
things
has
like
it
that.
too. You can send like if you're browsing to your phone, you can just click on open on computer and Chrome does it too.
Yeah, it's a little slower, but it does. They do have something kind of like it.
Yeah, it's probably cloud based, right? Like because when you click on your phone, it sends you a cloud or something. But Mac is probably it has some local network integration because it's like they have that everything. I think they have all the code for like it's in a
All
local
the shared
network,
stuff
everything
like that
works.
is
But
through
it's
the
local,
cloud.
right? But
No,
is in the cloud?
yeah, all of that stuff. It's just that it's synced frequently.
Okay.
Like everything is sort of live. if that makes sense. But they can do
Oh,
it
okay.
efficiently so that you don't have to worry about your battery dying.
The
Nice.
cloud is just someone else's computer.
That's true.
Lynn just says something interesting in the chat. I don't know, he's being a little shy, but I thought he made a great point about the Google Glasses. Can you elaborate on that and why that's like more fascinating to you? Because I kind of agree with you. There's something there too.
Or do you have your audio or no?
Oh, probably not. So he mentioned that.
He's running Arch,
He
so
mentioned,
it's probably in and out.
Oh yeah, his Linux his thing died. So he says, I'm waiting for contact lenses or glasses that are my OS display. Google Glass did it wrong, but it was a good start. Gloves like 7 of 9 wears for input. I don't know about the 7 of 9 wears, but
That's a
Star
Voyager.
Trek reference.
oh okay. I just lost my nerd card.
No, not at
So
all.
the Google Glasses thing with the rise of AR, and think of Microsoft's like HoloLens, I think it's called, or I forgot the exact thing. That could be where convergence leapfrogs, because part of the seamless UX experience of having one code base to kind of like we marry together with everything else, it could be that instead of it being device as a phone brick, it could be the device is the glass, the glasses or the headset could be the thing. So that could be the leapfrog. That's what happens when it comes to big, huge paradigm shifts in computing. It's sometimes a huge leapfrog. So we're thinking it's this form factor when really we can all be thinking about convergence incorrectly. And maybe the convergence occurs through AR, augmented reality, not so much virtual reality. Trippy.
How much compute power you need for that AR stuff? Because you need a lot, right? You need a lot of GPU stuff along with
What-
CPU stuff.
Depends if we have 5G and crazy internet pass through like we're seeing from Stadia, it may be shared. It might not always have to be, especially how fast machine learning is with kind of like observing its environment and being able to respond. Like, I don't know if you guys have apps where you can measure things through your app on the phone, and the calculations it's doing on your phone is kind of impressive in real time. So
Yes, that's possible because it's a trained model. So they already trained the model that deployed it, so the calculations are fast.
Well,
yeah, so
it also helps when you have like really well designed dedicated hardware for a certain thing like that. And that's why like Apple can get away with doing their AR stuff like on iPhones so well.
that's very
We're
true.
not far off.
I do enjoy some level of convergence with my Plasma setup and my Android phones.
Oh yeah.
So I do get I use Firefox and everything, so I can move back and forth from the desktop to the phone very easily. You can send web pages to whatever, SMS is
KDE Connect
basically,
too.
yep. And then also virtual input from the phone to the desktop as well. So there is that. Also the clipboard is copied. Like, so if I copy something on my desktop, I can paste it into a message or whatever. So it's there, but sometimes I notice that KDE Connect will like pick up and lose its mind momentarily and then pick back up. And I
Same
notice
here,
this happens is all of a sudden I'll get like a flood of notifications in my computer, and that
Yep.
annoys me every time that happens. So like, you already gave me all those notifications. Thank you. Stop.
That's why I stopped.
So
That's why I stopped using KDE Connect, because like
well, I rely on it too heavily, so I can't not have it. Is my issue.
you're hooked.
So, all right. There's in distro news. Have you guys heard of SpiralLinux or the SpiralLinux project? I think I brought it up recently. I got some feedback from. Does anybody here remember Gecko Linux, the OpenSUSE kind of respin? Well, so the developer of
Yep.
Gecko Linux has started SpiralLinux. It's based on Debian 11. It's powered by by 5.16 kernel. It offers spins of Cinnamon, XFCE, GNOME, Plasma, Mate, Budgie, and LXQt. It includes Flatpak support built as well as a GUI front end for managing Flatpak packages. The distribution uses Butterfest file system, which includes all the optimal subpartitions with Z standard transparent compression and built-in support for automatic snapper snapshots and even ZRAM swap support. So this is a very different take on the Debian-based distro. And so it's interesting because he goes, his email address is S and then some numbers. I don't know his name, but he did tell me in an email that he's concerned about the future of OpenSUSE Leap because of their changes that they're making to the project, and so he's hedging his bets on Debian not changing, but the OpenSUSE based Gecko Linux is still going to be there for as long as Leap. He can do stuff with Leap. Anyway, so Gecko Linux will continue to be maintained.
What changes are happening? Oh, no, I was just gonna say I don't know what the changes are for Leap. So if you know anything about that, since you do run OpenSUSE.
I do, and so the changes for Leap that are kind of sort of happening or they're being discussed is it's kind of like a merger of some of the micro OS features, the transactional based. Help me out here, Prophetic. What is it called? The like Silverblue.
Yeah, micro OS desktop.
Yeah, so there's some of the incorporating some of those.
OS. Yeah. It's about it's so early in ALP discussions, but by the way, they have this really cool thing that they're doing called workgroup communities, where they're trying to field input from the community on ALP, which is like the temporary code name for whatever it's going to be. And so you should check out. I'll send the link out for that. But yeah, it's going to borrow a lot of the stuff from what they learned from micro OS desktop, and the whole immutable file system.
Right, that's it, immutable file system.
Angle. So it should be interesting, but it's so early, no one really knows for sure.
Yeah, Leap is kind of skating toward the immutable file system essentially. So as that happens, that makes there's some concern by some in the community that it's not going to be as pliable, as flexible to do with what you want essentially. And I understand those concerns. I don't think that's going to be an issue because I don't see OpenSUSE is very community focused as far as what they produce. So if the community doesn't want it, it's not going to happen, or they're going to make a way for the community to be happy essentially. For the most part, obviously not going to please everybody, but anyway, so that's part of the SpiralLinux exists because of some of those changes that are potentially going to happen, and so it's another outlet basically for this developer to build a distribution similar to what Gecko Linux is, but using Debian and taking some of those OpenSUSE features and putting it into Debian, which I think is actually pretty compelling. Some of those things, and I like that cross pollination between distributions anyway. So basically, the aim for SpiralLinux is make
a lot.
What's that? Go ahead.
There is a lot of distros and stuff like that are now on the Debian bandwagon. I really don't think it's going to seriously change all that much in the future. I mean, I can think of 5 or 6 distros off the top of my head now that are on Debian for their base.
Well, Debian is the base of a lot of things. So it's interesting that he chose to use Debian and not Fedora. And I wonder why that is, because Fedora seems to be the same kind of an open base to build things off of.
I personally, I use Debian on this machine because it just works. I can turn it on. Nothing's ever broken. Everything works just fine. It's a great alternative from Arch to game on because it doesn't have so many background processes running like Ubuntu has in larger distros. It's kind of, a minimal thing you build on. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're totally fine. I just think it's interesting that he chose Debian as opposed to Fedora. Whatever. Do whatever you want to do. That's kind of my attitude. But we are kind of closing at the end of time here. So what I do want to do is bring up what's on the menu for next week. We're having another distro exploration. And speaking of Fedora, I really would like to try out Fedora 36. So for those that want to do the distro exploration.
And the spins.
Yep, and the spins. So you can pick whatever Fedora flavor, spin, topping, whatever it is you want on your Fedora base. Go for it, and then we'll meet back next week with our same sort of criteria of exploring the distribution. How does it run for you? What are the issues you may have had with it? some things you like to see, maybe that would make it a better experience, or if there's nothing that you see that make it better, whatever, we'll go with that. So, but it's gonna be a constructive conversation we'll have about Fedora. So with that said, and because my internet connection I think is I just got the notification by Zoom that my connection is no longer stable. So just now it's having a problem. I'm going to go ahead and close this thing out. So Steve's very own, he does a stream Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern or 8 a.m. Central. So if you'd like to join him, it's the Coffee Clutch. He should hopefully get his audio issues sorted out by tomorrow. Mark, it's been a week since I've seen you in person. Are you doing the Atlanta Linux Users Group tomorrow?
Yep, the Atlanta Linux user group meets every Sunday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, and we're online. You can get information about that at ale.org, ale.org. And yeah, it's an open forum where users can join and ask for help with Linux questions. And sometimes we talk about open source, but keep in mind you got to manage your own questions and make sure we stay on topic.
That is a struggle. I can understand. All right, and let's see, Tyler, you do kind of a caffeinated Linux show yourself. Is that correct?
Yes, I primarily do some streaming on Twitch. Less Linux content these days, more playing games, doing things like GeoGuessr, and I'd like to start streaming Euro Truck Simulator like Zeb used to do. So things like that. I've got a capture card. I plug my Switch into it and capture Switch games. I also, on the lug topic, earlier today, just had a Linux Users Group meeting with the Lawrence Linux Users Group. So if you're in Eastern Kansas, feel free to look that up. We're on Get Together. I was just speaking with them earlier today, working on getting a website set back up, doubling our virtual meetings, and having our first in-person meeting again next month in the Lawrence Library.
That sounds like fun. Excellent. Now I have a hard time.
And since Linux Ninja, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Your thoughts.
Can you hear me?
Oh, go ahead, Linux Ninja.
Yeah, we we had a Linux lug running back when DOSGeek lived in the area here in Ballground. He moved away and he handed the lug over to me, and we were meeting in my office until my office moved into a smaller space. So due to this pandemic thing, we haven't had meetings for a few months, but I'm gonna try starting it back up next month. I've already talked to the Johnny's Pizza location here in Canton, Georgia. When we were going strong, we had about 20 regulars that were showing up, bringing in hardware. We were assembling Raspberry Pi kits.
Nice.
We did IPv4 networking class to explain how IPv4 worked, and then got into IPv6. So I've got a few regulars who will be certain to show. We will be doing it also on Zoom for those who want to attend remotely. I put the link in the chat for the North Georgia. It's now called the Linux and Pizza. It used to be called Linux and Coffee. Anyone interested can go sign up there on the website, and I update the site with the Zoom link and times and dates once we get that decided.
Nice. That's excellent. Let's see. Linux User Space is still on break, but they've been uploading their back catalog, so check that out on their YouTube. Destination Linux is streaming live tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. So if you are, if you like live shows that don't hiccup and melt down most of the time, check out Destination Linux streaming live tomorrow. Got another episode of Linux Out Loud coming out this Wednesday, based on a talk that we had at Self. I brought up the idea of, do we open source for love, money, or both? And so that's coming up on Wednesday. For more on things about me, go to cubeglate.com. I do stuff most of the time. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital network. For more great shows, you can check out tuxdigital.com, and there's a whole boatload of shows to check out. So I want to thank you all for being part of the conversation, both the Zoom meeting and in the YouTube stream as it held out. And everyone watching after the fact, I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous. Uh-oh, Steve, I can't hear you. Uh-oh. I'm looking. I see a look of disgust on his face. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Just, Steve, just make sure you pay your tab on your way out. That's all. That's all I'm asking.
I'll cover his tab tonight. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. By the way, am I now audible on both sides for those that are listening, like in headphones? I think I have it fixed.
Yep.
Okay. If not, that's all right. It's par for the course. Steve, is your mic working? Is Zoom kicking your rear? It's gonna be a good show tomorrow, Steve, isn't it?